Ready to the 6 p.m. Special Redevelopment Agency of October 1st, 2019. Let the roll call reflect that all board members are present. I've asked Board Member Chaburka to lead us through the Pledge of Allegiance.
And I have actually asked Councilmember Lopez, which I didn't tell you.
Perfect.
I apologize about that.
That's okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the audience please rise and repeat after me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Lopez. If you'll please join us in a moment of silence. Thank you. First item on our agenda is approval of minutes for the special meeting of February 19th, 2019. Board Member Blair.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have reviewed those and found them to be accurate.
For the regular meeting of May 14th, 2019, Board Member Heyer.
Yes, I reviewed them also, and they're accurate to the best of my recollection.
For the special meeting of May 28th, 2019, Board Member Lopez.
Yes, Chair, I reviewed those minutes. I found them to be accurate to the best of my recollection, and I move that we approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion by Board Member Lopez, second by Board Member Heyer to approve the minutes as presented. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you for reviewing those, you guys. Next item on our agenda is reports from administration. We're joined by Brandon Cooper to present the Garn Hotel Participation and Incentive Agreement. Thanks, Brandon. Good to see you, bud.
Good to see you, folks. Thanks for your time. Thanks for the slot, the early slot on the agenda this evening. I'm not used to that, so thank you. Before you is proposed resolution 2019-14, which is a resolution granting the authority to the executive director to authorize participation and incentive agreement between the agency and Garn Development Company for the development of a new dual-branded Hilton flag hotel on the corner of 24th and Lincoln. If you're familiar with the site, there's a map. It's a little over 2 acres right there on the corner of Lincoln and 24th. It's a vacant building, or it was. It no longer exists. It's been torn down as of today. Previous to now, it's been used as the Tech Media Building, the Perch Building. Some of you might know it as the Amalgamated Sugar Building as well. It's currently in the Kiesel CDA. That CDA was a community development area, was established in 2015. It has a 20-year period, and that budget was established at $10.4 million. So this gives you a little bit of context of what the tool looks like in terms of the approvals previously. We have $1.12 million of commitments in that area, so you'll see that anything that is approved tonight is well under the cap of 10.4. Prior to today, basically, this is the 2015 valuation of those 2 parcels that make up the site. So prior to today's potential or proposed work, that was the valuation that the parcels were at the county level. So 2015 valuation of the smaller parcel was 126 and the larger parcel was 1.8. So a little under $2 million in its current condition, or the condition that it existed since 2015 till now. And with the proposed hotel, that's kind of a site configuration of what the hotel would look like. The proposed hotel we're projecting its new taxable value of about $18.8 million. So a net increase of over $16 million based on the proposed new development. There's a rendering of what the Planning Commission has previously approved. Our planning staff and the developers worked really hard to work in some upgrades in this model. This is a new approach to development in terms of a hotel brand. There's actually 2 brands here, the Home 2 Suites, which would be on the Lincoln side, and the True brand, which is on the 24th Street side. So you would walk into the lobby and you'd have 2 different hotel options, both offered by Hilton. And so we're happy that the upgrades and the improvements to the exterior facade have been made by the developer, and part of the reason why they can do some of these upgrades is by the assistance of the public subsidy through the RDA. Here's another look at some of the elevations, the inclusion of an increased amount of brick to match some of the environment that it's in from the downtown perspective. Reduction of some of the bright colors that are really specific to the brand. Those are some of the things that the developer has implemented. There's another look, west elevation, south elevation. We look at these applications very seriously whenever we're thinking about the use of public subsidy for any project. We have a process that we go through. There's a multi-page application that we ask the applicant to fill out. That gives us a knowledge and understanding of the proposal, all of the planning details, the economics, the partnership, the investments, those kind of things. We go through kind of an analysis and review of our mission and goals that as it relates to our various plans, the general plan, in this case the CDA, Kiesel CDA plan, any of the applicable zoning. We go through an investment analysis to make sure that we are truly looking at a scenario that without public subsidy investment, the property would not be feasible, or the project would not be feasible. So that's a major criteria of what we look for. And then obviously design and use, those are big things. So we want to make sure that it's applicable to the downtown environment in this case, and the uses that are happening on the inside of the building are something that are promoting and contributing to the neighborhood. Then we enter into a draft participation and incentive agreement that is then presented to you folks as we are tonight. And based on tonight's action, we would move to a final participation and incentive agreement, which would be signed by the parties. And then, let me back up. We have a work session to talk about the draft, and then presentations such as tonight, and then we move into the final agreement that's signed by the parties. So here are the deal points of the actual draft agreement that's in your packet. So this would be incentive of a little over $1.7 million, so $1.768508. That is consisting of 11 annual payments from 2022 to 2032. And that's actually a partial payment. So what the percentage breakout means, as you see it there, is 50% of the tax increment that's generated by the property for the first 5 years, and then 55% of that tax increment thereafter for the remaining 11. So that means that the agency retains, in those cases, a good portion of the taxes that are the new taxes that are generated by the project, and you can see how those are spread and what those would be used for. In this case, 23 and 20% over that period. So let's say an average of 21% would actually be retained in the agency general fund to be used for public improvements, infrastructure improvements, other things that might be needed in the actual Kiesel CDA. Very short, very to the point. I'll take any questions.
Thanks, Brandon.
I'd like to go back to that last slide, Brandon. It showed the housing at 20%. Is there a certain area that housing would be administered, or is that throughout the city?
That is unrestricted. It goes into our housing fund, which is a separate fund. Quality Neighborhoods also helps support some of our housing. So that is used to promote our housing initiatives citywide.
Okay.
Anyone else? Questions for Mr. Gabriel?
I have a question. Can you just talk a little bit more about the feasibility you mentioned of like how the project wouldn't be feasible without the tax increment?
Right, so it's generally called gap funding. So we want to make sure that public dollars, which in this case, I want to remind everybody that this is not a new tax. This is not a tax to other property owners in the district or outside the district in other city areas. This is only tax that is generated by the project after it's built. That is the differential between the post-development taxes versus the pre-development taxes. And it's being, in this case, returned back to the developer. So we want to make sure that in the event that that is being utilized, that we're only doing so in a way that makes the project feasible. In other words, the project could not take place and the property would persist in its existing condition without such a subsidy.
Anyone else?
I did have one more question. I apologize. In the meanwhile, since we talked about this in the work session, I did get some, constituents that sort of talked a little bit about hotel capacity in the city and had questions around that. And I know we got a recommendation from Sarah Tolliver of Visit Ogden around we need more rooms because we don't have enough. Can you speak to that a little bit? I mean, obviously, the developer is the one that's in the hotel business, but do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, there's a number of kind of checkpoints that specifically when it's related to hotels that we want to go through. One is talking with our folks at the CVB to make sure that that they are on board with the proposal, that they understand it, that they, in this case, agree with it. And you're right, Sarah Tolliver from the CVB gave her kind of thumbs up recommendation. We also asked the developer to provide us a market study of the current market conditions, and that's done by an individual by the name of Robert Benton. He's one of the best hospitality markets study guys there is. And so in this case, he actually honed down the types of rooms, the size of the rooms, the numbers of the rooms, the average daily rate, so the price of the rooms. And so his report was also favorable that the market is growing, that the room nights can be absorbed in the market without cannibalizing other hotels, and that this is essentially growing the pie, not just shifting money around within an existing diminishing market. So with kind of a local confirmation from our CVB and a market study that really shows that this is something that is feasible, and obviously the developer is looking at this from an economic standpoint, as is Hilton Hotel. So all of those kind of checkpoints tell us that this is something that that is doable. Now, you compare that to the but-for scenario. If it's such a plausible, feasible thing to do, then why is there public subsidy necessary? You factor in the high cost of the ground, the need for demolition. Those are the things that really take a otherwise feasible project and make it infeasible because of the high cost.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Cooper?
I'm sorry if I missed this. Did you mention or you happen to know about how many jobs this business would generate?
I do not.
You don't know?
No.
Okay.
This was about more of a blight reduction of a vacant and underutilized property, and then the creation of new growth taxes, which we're absorbing some of that over the period. So our analysis did not include job creation.
Thank you.
Did the CVB's analysis include any estimates on transient room tax revenues that could be generated?
If she did not share that with me.
Okay. Presumably, however, it'd be a positive net impact.
Right.
Any other questions for Mr. Cooper?
Mr. Chair, I have one, and then maybe a comment. Is we suggested in our work session that this project look, and maybe you mentioned that you would suggest it to the developer that they use the resources that we have and the suppliers that we have here in Ogden. But I know we're going through the Union Pacific area and the downtown area and developing a master plan. That hasn't been developed as of yet. How does this program fit into that project that we're looking at?
So if you go back to some of the analysis that we perform when we look at that, the fourth bullet point there, design and use analysis, that's where we started to look at the original proposal of the building, which is dramatically different than what you're seeing tonight. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to get the developer to be at a point where they could build a building that if it was being approved under the new guidelines that are yet to be established, that it would be approved. So I think we're as close as we possibly can in terms of the market conditions and what it can bear. I think our future design standards and guidelines will be a little bit more onerous than what you might see here, but the Planning Commission, our planning staff, and the developer are all comfortable with the result that we have.
Okay.
So the project would fit into that master program if we had one.
We believe so. We tried really hard to make sure it did.
Okay.
Even though we haven't decided on what that's going to be
Right.
yet. But can you maybe go to that rendering and give us some examples of what changed?
Sure. So I've mentioned a couple of things. Let me just recall those. The addition of the brick material. The brick material that you see here is in much greater quantity than it was on the original proposal. The reduction of the colored panels. Those colored panels are a brand element that you see on these types of hotels across the portfolio. So we tried to get those reduced as much as possible. The reduction of stucco on the street side, so 24th and Lincoln, those panels that you're looking at are largely metal panels, not stucco panels. The addition of glazing on the ground floor. So even though there aren't any additional uses in this building, it's a single-purpose building. So there are no other ground floor uses that you might see in a mixed-use building. There is additional glass, which allows you to see into the building and really creates that pedestrian, that desirable pedestrian area. So those are just a number of things. The location on the site, if you go back to this picture, one of the original concepts pushed the building back into the site further and put the parking out into the corner, so that was flip-flop. So there's been a lot of iterations of this, and I believe we're as close as we can get to a future standard that hasn't been established yet.
Yeah. It's harder than a moving target.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for Brandon?
So I just kind of go back and clarify a couple of things. So this Kiesel area at original time was, it says, a base taxable value of $21 million. And you've capped it at $10 million. Is that what that said, 10.4?
That's the budget. That's the money that
And we're using $1 million of that, correct?
1.768, correct. So out of that total allowable budget that can be used for public subsidy, with this proposal, if it was approved, plus the one that was previously approved, we'd be
$2.5 million.
$2-3 million, and that would leave $8 million-ish to then look at future projects that would come forth during the duration of the district and address any of those concerns at that point.
And so if this was approved, when would the construction of the hotel begin?
I believe immediately. So I believe the construction would be ongoing throughout next year, and the completion date in the agreement is June of the following year. So it's immediate.
So Brandon, you mentioned that about a lot of the revisions that took place in the process for improvements aesthetically and structurally. We've hired a consulting firm to help us with those design standards, and they're really sharp, right? And
Yeah.
they bring a lot of people and a lot of expertise. Have they had a chance to take a look at the changes that this has gone through?
They did. The developer allowed us to share their conceptual plans with our consultant design workshop. And so their team reviewed everything, gave a 2-page report back to the developer of things that they would want to see changed based on what we're currently working on. A number of those things were implemented, the addition of ground floor glass, the reduction of stucco, those kind of things. The addition of a front door. So in this picture here, you'll notice that, I'm assuming you can see the hand, this is actually a real entryway here off of Lincoln and 24th, whereas previously the only entryway was in the back. So that was another addition by the consulting team. So although they didn't implement all of the recommended changes, they did implement a number of key ones.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. Appreciate doing that. Okay, any other questions for Mr. Cooper?
It's a nice turnaround on taxable value.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Brandon. Appreciate it. Okay, if there's no more questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion then that we adopt Resolution 2019-14.
I second it.
We have a motion by Board Member Heyer, second by Board Member Stevens to adopt proposed resolution 2019-14. This is a roll call vote.
Board Member Blair,
Aye.
Board Member Heyer,
Aye.
Board Member Lopez,
Aye.
Board Member Stevens,
Aye.
Board Member White,
Aye.
Vice Chair Chaburka,
Aye.
Chair Nadolski.
Aye. That passes. Okay, thank you, Mr. Cooper, for your work. There you are. Appreciate it. Okay, next item on our agenda is adjournment. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Board Member Heyer, second by Board Member Lopez to adjourn. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned and we'll begin our council meeting here shortly. Good. Okay. Welcome, everybody, to the City Council meeting of October 1st, 2019. Let the roll call reflect that all council members are present. And thank you to everyone who hung in there for our redevelopment agency meeting. We act in multiple roles in decision-making points in the city. So the first item on our agenda is Planning Month Proclamation, which will be read by former Ogden City Planning Commissioner himself, Councilman Heyer.
I did get emeritus status.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's my pleasure to present this. So we have our planning director, Greg Montgomery here, and he's brought with him Amber, one of our planners. We're glad to have you both here to accept this this declaration on the plaque. And I will proceed with that now. Declaring October 2019 Community Planning Month in Ogden City. Whereas change is constant and affects all cities, towns, suburbs, counties, boroughs, townships, rural areas, and other places. And whereas community planning can help guide this change in a way that provides better choices for how people live and work. And whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents to be meaningfully involved in making choices that determine the future of their community. And whereas the benefit of community planning requires public officials and citizens who understand, support, and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation. And whereas the month of October is designated as National Community Planning Month throughout the United States of America and its territories. And whereas the American Planning Association and its Professional Institute and the American Institute of Certified Planners endorse National Community Planning Month as an opportunity to highlight the contributions sound planning and plan implementation make to the quality of our cities and environment. And whereas the American Planning Association's 2019 theme of Planning for Infrastructure and Benefits All highlights how all types of well-planned infrastructure from roads and transit systems to parks and trails strengthen communities, boost the economy, and expand opportunities for all members of the community. And whereas the celebration of National Community Planning Month gives us the opportunity to publicly recognize the participation and dedication of the members of the planning commissions and all other citizen planners who have contributed their time and expertise to the improvement of Ogden, Utah. And whereas the celebration also gives us the opportunity to recognize the many valuable contributions made by the professional community planners of Ogden, Utah, which includes the city's planning staff and the city's Community and Economic Development Department, and extend our heartfelt thanks for the continued commitment to public service by these professionals. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Ogden City Council and Mayor Michael P. Caldwell hereby proclaim October 2019 Community Planning Month in Ogden City. Community Planning Month in Ogden, Utah is part of a nationwide recognition and celebration of community planning and its opportunity to recognize all of the citizen and professional planners who have diligently worked to make Ogden a unique and vibrant place to work, live, learn, and play. Passed and adopted this first day of October 2019. And I will make a motion then that we adopt or approve this joint proclamation declaring October 2019 as Community Planning Month in Ogden City.
Second. Oh, yeah. Thank you, Councilmember Heyer. We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, second by Councilmember Blair to adopt or approve this joint proclamation. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes.
Chair, we don't have any planning commissioners, I don't think. We do have one. But there are 9. And did I miss one?
I don't think so.
But these people put put a lot of time and effort into this, and the learning curve is long, and so it's, as you're aware, there's a lot to know, and we are grateful for the time they spend in making recommendations to us, to the mayor, and the things that they do to make Ogden better. So Greg and Amber, would you come up and?
And the planning commission.
Yeah, do you want Angela? Angel, sorry. Do you want Angel?
It was way down.
Thank you. Thanks, Greg. Amber, nice to have you here.
Thanks so much. Thanks for being here. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for everything.
Thank you.
Want a picture?
We're gonna take a picture over there, right?
Yeah. Oh, right.
I don't want to be quite as tall.
Okay, come on, we're squeezing tight.
Yeah, over here, man.
We're taking a picture.
My things over
Love to hear from you. Bring Amber with you. Don't let her get off.
Don't let her not.
Maybe Amber would want to say a few words too.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate Glenn's efforts to make that recognition possible each year. As you were reading that proclamation, I was thinking about the infrastructure part of it. I couldn't help but think, several years ago, one of our first major infrastructure projects trying to get people to realize what potential we have and planning for it were the trail systems. I can remember back when we first tried to do that, the fight that took place with every meeting, the opposition that there's no good thing that will come by a public trail, fear that you can't put this by my house because what we'll see is people carrying my TVs off down the trail system. There was a lot of paranoia. And you think now, where are we at with our trail system? Where are we at with the amphitheater? When Keith Avenue used to go through here, and that was closed to say, let's get a gathering spot, let's create that infrastructure. And now come to where we're at now, our next great adventure is the bus rapid transit. Another system that will help the community and improve its ability to move about and development potentials and create opportunities for all our citizens. And so, all the way along throughout time, we've had those challenges. We've saw the need for them. We've moved forward with that, and they've come to be blessings for the community and things we point back to as pride to the community and activities that are available for all people. And I think that's one of those things as we look at these plans are important to visualize, and time will come if they're a good plan. They just keep resurfacing, and soon as this is the time to do it. And so I think that recognition is important to understand that process that takes place. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You gonna say something, Amber?
I'm happy to be here.
That's it. We hear from him all the time.
I know, I need to come to these meetings more.
never heard that.
I'm really happy to work for our community as well and be a part of making it better and coming up with solutions to get what we want. So I'm just happy to be a part of that. Thanks.
Well, tell the other commissioners, thank you for the work that they've done. Show them the plaque and give them an attaboy for us, will you?
I'm actually looking at my calendar. I'm scheduled to be there tomorrow night at the planning commission meeting.
I actually was planning to be there too. They have an interesting agenda, so.
You are welcome to get your planning on.
All right.
Yeah. It takes all types.
Well, no, it takes one night for that.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Greg. Okay, next item on our agenda is Disability Employment Awareness Month. We've asked Councilmember Lopez to read this proclamation, but before we do, we are joined tonight by Andy Curry from Roads to Independence and Board Member Kathy Darby as well. And there might be others that I'm missing, but I know John Prescott, you're pretty darn involved there and volunteering. So if I've missed others, I apologize. But those are the only ones I.
Basketball team over there too.
Oh yeah,
There's a lot of jerseys here.
And we got a basketball team that's anxious to kick our They're anxious to kick our butts.
Yeah.
Okay, Councilmember Lopez, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Ndelsky. It is an honor for me to read this proclamation declaring October 2019 Disability Employment Awareness Month in Ogden City. Whereas workplaces welcoming of the talents of all people, including people with disabilities, are a critical part of our efforts to build an inclusive community and strong economy. In this spirit, Ogden City is recognizing Disability Employment Awareness Month this October to raise awareness about disability, employment issues, and celebrate the many and varied contributions of people with disabilities. Whereas the U.S. Department of Labor announced the right talent right now as the theme for this year's National Disability Employment Awareness Month. This theme emphasizes the essential role people with disabilities play in America's economic success, especially in an era when historically low unemployment and global competition are creating a high demand for skilled talent. And whereas the return of service members with disabilities from World War II sparked public interest in the contributions of people with disabilities in the workplace, in response, President Harry S. Truman approved a congressional resolution declaring the first week in October as National Employed, the Physically Handicapped Week, on August 11, 1945. In 1962, the word physically was removed to acknowledge the employment needs and contributions of individuals with all types of disabilities. In 1988, the United States Congress expanded the campaign to last the entire month of October. And whereas Roads to Independence is a nonprofit organization committed to serve individuals with disabilities in Weber, Davis, and Morgan counties, they provide independent living services, advocacy training, life skills training, and recreation necessary to live a full life. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Ogden City Council and Mayor Michael P. Caldwell hereby proclaim October 2019 Disability Employment Awareness Month in Ogden City. We encourage residents, schools, businesses, and community groups to recognize the importance of inclusive policies and practices to ensure that everyone who wants to work can do so. We appreciate the efforts of Roads to Independence and other institutions and organizations who promote disability employment awareness and support in our community. And with that, I would like to make a motion that we adopt this joint proclamation.
A second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Lopez, seconded by Councilmember Chaburka to approve this joint proclamation. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you, everybody. Let's have everybody come up and we'll do a photo and then we'll hear from Andy and others.
We need to go down there.
You think so? Oh, there's one more right there. Oh, go right in front. Right in front. I don't think it will get you. You'll go behind it. There.
Okay, one more.
He's hiding. He's hiding over there. You have to do a panorama.
right. That was speeding, I think. All right. Okay.
Well, now, look at you. You're fast as
Check 1, 2.
Well, that's different. Sandy, can I say something? Oh, yeah, there he is.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to receive this. I can't remember what number this is for us, but I thank you guys very much for recognizing this month as Disability Employment Awareness Month. Again, my name is Andy Curry. I'm the Executive Director at Roads to Independence. As it says, we work with people with disabilities. We serve about 3,000 people a year in Morgan, Weber, and Davis County, and do just about anything and everything you can think of to help people become and maintain their independence in the community. So nobody lives at our place except for me sometimes. I got a bed in the back. No, but seriously, it's fortuitous that we actually have this going. We just started some new services for youth with disabilities in our community. It's called pre-employment training services. It's for youth that are just learning to get into the workforce, that have never had a job, have disabilities, and it's also working with youth to get them to post-employment or post-secondary education, going to college, going to school. And some of the activities that we're going to be doing, we're going to be able to have paid internships and paid job shadowing, training and everything. So hopefully the city will also be a partner in that, and being a place where youth with disabilities can learn what it takes to be, work for, planning commission or different things like that, different areas and different fields. And hopefully the city will be a partner in with that. And also, many of you know that we had talked about having a basketball game with the city on the 10th of this month. Hopefully not canceled. Hopefully we're just going to postpone it a few months and that we can do that in January. Sounds like schedules were very tight this month. I know this is a busy month, especially with the elections coming up and everything. So hopefully we can just reschedule and do it in January with a little bit more time and everything before the session, right? Yep. There you go. And but hopefully we can do that. Maybe we can expand it a little bit and really show off, abilities with people with disabilities. And for those that don't know, we're looking to purchase our building, so we can maybe throw in a little plug for doing a fundraiser type of thing as well, and create some awareness about that. We're hoping to purchase our building, remodel downstairs, and put an elevator in the building. So right now we just have the top floor. So with these new services and everything, we're looking to serve anywhere from 300 to 1,000 more people with disabilities. So a lot of people. So we need more room. So with that, and I'm joined today, as you mentioned, we have several board members here today, have some staff here, some consumer advocates, and of course the Wheeling Wildcats as well. So again, thank you very much for this honor. Yep. So
You are very familiar with me, but I want to just tell you a little. I have been disabled from the time I was 15 months old, and with polio. You know, you don't hear about that very much anymore. But you know, from being picked on because being different to now making the city disability employment awareness. We've come a long ways. And I'd like to see us go a lot further. You know, and I appreciate Ben coming to the center. You know, and he had an experience that I know he'll never forget. You know, and appreciate that, Ben, very much. Thank you. We love Ogden City. And we love the Ogden City Council and appreciating and doing this proclamation, accepting this proclamation. And we're excited about getting this basketball tournament going. And I told Ben and Rich, I says, I was willing to play against them myself. You know, but anyway, thank you very much for becoming aware of the importance of helping the people with disabilities in the employment industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Andy, appreciate you being really kind about why the game was postponed when the real reason was so you could give us some more time to get ready. Because we all know we're going to get our butts kicked, but John, you know, awareness.
You get time to build up a little more now.
We got work to do, but no, I'm glad that I spent that day with you because awareness is important, but awareness can also be really powerful if we take steps. So I look forward to helping in January. It would be great to help the organization take that next step. That's important. So thank you. Appreciate you guys.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
I'm glad we got more time. And John, watch out. You know, we're on top of things around here.
I'm happy for you. I'll be cheering for the wheelchairs.
So we have, in the course of running a city, there's lots of city regular business and administration to do. We still have a couple items, but we are kind of time certain on a couple of them. And recognizing how many folks are here tonight, we're also time sensitive to the time that you guys spend as well. And so rather than making you wait till the end of the meeting while we wait for them to arrive, I'll entertain a motion if the council supports to move public comment ahead of item 3.
Chair, I'll make that motion to move public comment above item 3.
I second.
We have a motion.
Do we know how far
Yeah,
Cameron is out?
7 o'clock. I think.
15 minutes at least. So we have a motion by Councilmember Chaburka, second by Councilmember Lopez to move public comment ahead between items 2 and 3. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Just discussion if
Sorry.
we went before.
Sure.
I want to make sure that when we see Cameron come in, that we can suspend public comment for just so that we understand that there's an expectation that would happen.
We'll see what we can do. We'll see how flexible Cameron is on this time.
Okay.
I think that's appropriate for Cameron coming his distance to present the program. I would second what Rich has said.
No intention to create any controversies, but if someone is late and we have our public speaking, why are we going to suspend public comment
They're
to allow for
not
someone?
late. 7 o'clock was the plan.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My bad.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
We'll see if Cameron's got some flexibility in his schedule, and we'll try to accommodate everybody. We don't want to be mindful of everybody's time. So
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Okay. Back to the underlying motion. All in favor? This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We will open it up to public comment. This is an opportunity to address the council regarding concerns or ideas on any topic. Before you address the council, please state your name and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Joanne Lawrence, and I'm here to talk about Marshall White Center again. The Marshall White Center is a community recreation center owned and operated by Ogden City. This center that is owned by Ogden City is in severe disrepair, especially the pool. The pool serves many people, young and old, in the Midtown. You've indicated that you support fixing the Marshall White Center. It is not a replacement for the proposed YMCA. It's a different entity. And it's here now. Not 2-4 years from now. It's here right now. And it needs work. Where does the Marshall White Center stand in our community plan? And what are your plans to support this, to make it whole? Thank you.
Thank you. I think we had a question. It's kind of within our practice to give an answer if we can. We've actually started to talk about having the council leave the chambers and go take a tour of the Marshall White Center next week, is it? So that we can start to answer those questions for ourselves as well. Thank you for your comments.
I don't know if you guys are happy to see me or not. All right. Okay. Police discussion should never be considered.
Malik, sorry, can you state your name for the record?
Oh, sorry, Malik Dio, Ogden.
Thank you.
Police discussion should never be considered a political discussion. There shouldn't be political ramifications for any politicians' public stances on policing for whatever reasons. We are not a counter-policing group. We are not extremists. We do not have a predisposed political agenda. It is irresponsible language that was allowed to be used to describe some of us within these chambers. And all it will take is for one unstable individual who truly has a predisposed political agenda and a true extremist to adhere to this type of dog whistle that could bring possible harm to members of our group, and we ask that that statement be publicly retracted. We've set it plain and clear for months now what our agenda truly is. We are a pro-police reform group that advocates for the safety and lives of both community and the police. Our primary mission is to educate and effectuate legislation and policies regarding de-escalation and non-deadly force in our police department. I remember a time when I was young in Ogden. I knew who the police were in this community. I knew Steve Rankin. We were in a martial arts class together. I knew Officer Hightower. He was, rest in peace, he was Puerto Rican. He knew my grandfather by name. He knew my family. My cousin used to date Detective Sokai. Randy Watt used to be my martial arts instructor at one time. So back then I knew who police were. Nowadays nobody knows who they are. If I was to ask somebody, a teenager in my community, name 4 police officers to me, unless they've been in trouble with the law, they wouldn't know who they are. That's what we're fighting for. Thank you. Oh, one last thing. You need to read the new Jim Crow book, because a lot of members of this council have a narrow view of policing while others are kind of receptive to our message. This will break any narrow view of or any type of conservative bubble you've been living in about policing, and it'll possibly change your life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Malik.
Hi, I'm Sophia Garza. I'm also, here with Malik and others as well. One thing that I've noticed as I've been coming to these city council meetings, oh my goodness, we are not the only people that are complaining about diversity issues. Most of the public comments that I'm hearing are coming from people living in the margins. Our disabled community, the elderly, young people, people who are seeking environmental justice, people who are worried about their neighborhoods becoming, more gentrified and being unable to continue living in the place that they've been for, years and years. And yeah, if the people that are coming to public comment are those that are marginalized, if that's consistently who's speaking to you, that means that there's a problem, a wide problem. And there are a lot of issues that go along with that. Another demographic I forgot to mention, the homeless population. There are a lot of issues that lead to the complaints that people are coming up and sharing with y'all. And yeah, the new Jim Crow, this book that we had somebody come and recommend y'all read last week, and that Malik just recommended that you read. We actually had a local business owner donate enough copies for the mayor, Mark Johnson, and all members of the city council. We would really like for y'all to read it. We want to be able to give you the book so that you have that opportunity to maybe flip through it, read some pages. If you've already read it, we urge you to accept the book. I'm sure there's somebody in your life that could benefit from that message. I would like to ask permission for Nazeli to approach y'all and be able to pass that book on to y'all. And again, you guys represent our city. People have voted you into office. Make sure that you can, do the best that you can to represent the people who live in your city, the people who are coming to public comment and speaking with you and asking for your help. Understand that none of these issues exist in a bubble. They're all connected. They're all intersectional. They all lead into each other. So you've been asking to be educated, that there's a lot that you don't know, that you don't want to speak, from a place of ignorance, that you want to have more knowledge. We're giving you this book in the hope that, we can help educate you, and give you, a stronger base to understand where we're coming from. And also, when I go back to my chair, y'all have asked what exactly we want. And I know it's difficult when we're coming in every week and, asking for various things. We did sit down and put together a one sheet for y'all. And when I sit down, I'm going to take out my laptop and email that to all of you so you have a comprehensive list. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sophia.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Julia Barrientos, and this is my first time at your meeting. And I come here supporting others that are here to speak to you about the wonderful, important conversation that's happening in cities across our nation right now about police reform using non-lethal force and de-escalation training. I think there are many examples that we can look to in cities and towns across the country where these methods have been used, and it has reduced both the stress and grief and tragedy in our communities, as well as for the police department and for officers. I encourage you to continue that brave discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, my name's Angela Hernandez. Last time you guys see me was about my chicken. That's not what I'm here for today. I want to talk about affordable housing. We recently been looking to downsize because there's only 2 of us now. And I was looking around, and the prices are outrageous. I see these low-income places going bye-bye, and you guys' rent has gone up for a 2-bedroom apartment, $1,200. Is that not outrageous? I come from San Diego. I've been here 20 years. That's San Diego rates. If I want to pay that, I could have the ocean right outside my door. This is ridiculous. And then this RDA, you're here to encourage the development of affordable housing. Where's the affordable housing? Have any of you guys thought where these people you guys are kicking out are going? I mean, luckily I get paid decent, but where's everybody else going? I don't want to pay no $1,200 for an apartment when I'm paying less than $1,000 for a 5-bedroom house. Can't have a chicken, but it's still a house with a yard of my own. So have any of you guys thought about that? Because I'm sure you guys all own your homes. Some of us don't want renters, but renters spend money here. Renters work here. They live here. They have families here. So can somebody tell me, why are they going up? Is that affordable to you guys?
We'll give you some response after you're done. We just don't want to take, we don't
I'm
want to take
done.
your time.
Thank
Sorry. So we are mindful of that issue. That's why we started a housing fact-finding, a series of housing fact-finding sessions. We have had to postpone the final chapter of that fact-finding endeavor to accommodate some other demands of the council at the moment. But we'll be hearing some from Cameron Dill here in a little while after public comment, if that's okay. You okay to hang tight for a little while? Okay, thanks, bud. Okay, Ralph, you trying to get through, bud?
Yeah. Gotta jam up over there.
Ralph Price, 636 6th Street, respected the family. And so I just wanted to say, I've been ill this week and everything, but I want to commend the interchange as far as allowing them to be able to have the expression that you do and listening to them. And that it really does well to be able to see the function of government, people working together. I want to say also that I want to thank you. We've been looking for, like the young lady just got through saying, affordable housing, and we're having the discussion now. We're doing the different things that we are doing, and it's nice to see. I myself am out there with a lot of the homeless and the people coming out of prison and jails and the ones that are battered women and things like that, and the families of people coming out of drugs. Each and every day I do that from 4 o'clock in the morning to sometimes 1 o'clock at night. And I want you to know one thing, though. I saw it was defended in the paper there the other day. It said that Ogden City Housing counts that there's only 135 homeless people in Ogden City. I want you to know that's a section of Ogden City. I want you to know there's more than that. And that it should not be expounded as an effort for just 125 people. I pass out 300 breakfast burritos every morning. A couple of weeks ago, a couple of days ago, we had passed out in 3 parks. Three parks and 5 hotels, the different ones right here that are the lower income housing that are being forced to be used as housing and be around that element. There are so many more than 135 that I would like to see the effort to be able to maybe have the diversity board that you're talking about. As I said last week, I'd like to see that the budget there be increased so that they might get out and they might talk to some of the people that are not only just racist, but people that challenge. I want to commend Road to Independence for the things that he does, but I do want to say one thing, is that I'm not handicapped. And I have an amputated leg, I have cancer and a few other things, but I'll challenge any one of you to trade days. Because I start early and I end late. And I think that one of the things that we need to know is that we need to educate ourselves too to get away from these labels so we can start living lives that are productive and countering for each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph.
Good feeling better, Ralph.
Ralph and I talked today. He's not ill with a common cold. He's not feeling well for very serious reasons. So, Ralph, we take your comments seriously, knowing how hard it was for you to be here today. So, thank you. Anybody else?
Hi, everybody. You might remember me. I'm Tammy Krieger. I live at 159 West 2nd Street, and I am here again to advocate for the safety and security of all of our citizens. I mistakenly believed that we were going to talk about Ogden adopting, you all making a decision to have clean energy. I don't know what happened in the RDA meeting, but I would like to encourage you and say that there are lots of people here that support it, advocate for it. And it's very sad to me. I have a daughter with asthma who cannot go outside in the United States of America, in Ogden, Utah, where we love to live, except she can't live here healthfully. She cannot go outside without wearing a mask. And granted, she does have allergies, but a big part of the reason she can't is because of the quality of our air. And although we may not have lots of industry within our city, Mayor Caldwell, all council members, I encourage you to lead the charge of what we should do that's right in lots of ways for the wellness and safety and security for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Just so you're no longer confused, we had a work session today at 4 o'clock to begin our conversation about HB 411. So we do have a few steps to go still. And today was the first time that we started to bite into it, and we learned that we've got a lot more questions than we realized. So we'll get answers and conversations to come. Okay, sorry. Next, hey, welcome back.
Good evening. My name is Ed Mackner. I've been here before. I just think that I think the thing that gets to me is the amount of consciousness about the environment. And we think of a 1.5 Fahrenheit increase in global temperatures. We don't realize that there's a difference between temperature and heat. If I take one match and light it, and I take a box of matches and light those, the temperature is going to be the same. But what's going to be different is the amount of heat. So when we see in the newspaper we have a rise in temperature, it says, well, that's only 1.5 degrees. That doesn't mean anything. But it does when you think of the oceans, when you think of the terra firma. It's a huge thing. And what happens is that as the temperature rises, all the materials, the trees, the ground, start to hold heat. And the very natural process occurs is when you have a lot of heat, you have dissipation of that heat. And it's local, like, for example, in a hurricane or something like that, or a forest fire. And with that dissipation of heat, you have a dissipation of chaos. And another name for chaos is entropy. And this is a second law. And we can't get around this. You can't politicize this or anything like this. So this is the reason why sustainability is so important and why clean air is so important. My suggestion is that we get the fleet, city fleet, into electric vehicles with chargers all around to start helping the air and helping our citizens breathe better. Remember, 1 gallon of gasoline, 1 gallon weighs 7.2 pounds or something. You know how many pounds of carbon dioxide are emitted from 1 gallon? 20 pounds. And you can check that on www.eaiagency.gov. So I think, thank you very much for your interest, and I'm here just to kind of help it along.
Thank you. Thank you. Please, no clapping, please. It's one of our rules. Sorry. Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, I just wanted to. My name is Tom Benhart. I have a practice here in Ogden, and I just wanted to go over a few points since the council is considering this HB 411. So just a couple points I wanted to just highlight, just to encourage you council members to some things to consider. I guess in summary, the bottom line is that we need to opt in before December 31st. And so it does allow us to opt out. So if I can make that clear that that's important on this bill. Another thing, this bill is going to help address our air quality, as was mentioned a little earlier. And Utah's climate has changed 2 degrees, which is higher than some other states in the United States. So I hope this is a priority for Ogden City. Another point, our state senator voted yay on this bill. My representative voted yay on this bill. So it's, for it to get to this point, it was backed by some our bipartisan state legislators. Our air quality and sustainability and environment are becoming priorities for voters. So I want to emphasize us opting into this bill because it can be an election and a re-election issue. And so I encourage you all to seriously consider this. And please don't be distracted at this stage by the concerns for the economic details, because we can work this out. It's just, if the council can communicate to the city that this is our goal and we want to move toward that, then opting in will do that for us. I just ask you to look at the big picture at this point and allow Ogden to do what it needs to do to accomplish what we can. And if we want Ogden to lead in terms of outdoor recreation by improving our outdoor environment, then we're going to vote for this bill. So I thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Nazli Gonzalez. I wanted to start off by stating that I am thankful to be able to come up here and, voice my opinion and things that will better help the community of Ogden. So I did want to bring up something. In police shootings that we've had here in Ogden, each police shooting that we've had that has injured someone has involved more than one police officer. I'm not sure if you guys were aware of that, but I have found, which I can bring statistics up, where there is cases where in these police-involved shootings, there's not very much communication because it can get intense. There can, be a lot of emotions and things going on in the moment. But what I'm trying to say is I feel like we need to have one key person, if there's going to be an officer, communicate to the rest of his fellow officers who's going to carry the lethal weapon and who isn't. Because I have found in my studies that there's more than 2% of decisions made where one officer will decide not to use non-lethal force and the other will choose to use lethal force. I feel like they should communicate that way. Officers know what they're going to do, what their plan is, and have a strategized plan so lives aren't lost. So it saves not only the life of the citizen who officers are protecting, but also the lives of the officers themselves. For example, I was reading on something here that has happened. It's research based in Utah, where officers have decided to use lethal force where the other officer didn't, and it ended up resulting in deaths. I think it's very important to have someone who's in charge when there's more than one police officer at an incident that is getting escalated that might need to use some sort of force, to start with non-lethal force. As LAPD is doing, they're doing some trainings where they have several officers who are using non-lethal force, and they'll have one designated person who is using lethal force. And that way they are better to control the situation and de-escalate the person instead of alerting them when they see more than one person has a gun pointed at them, or more than one person is has a deadly weapon. That's something that can be scary. And obviously our response is flight or fight mode. So I think it'd be very beneficial that we have more non-lethal weapons than we do lethal weapons. And I mean, if they are planning to have those lethal weapons with them, that's understandable, but use non-lethal force first. There can be 1 or 2 officers that carry non-lethal weapons and 1 designated officer that carries lethal weapons, and then have better communication. That way all lives are saved. That's my point.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, there's one in the back. There's one in the back also.
Angel Castillo. I'd like to thank you all for the discussion that happened during the work session with regards to HB 411. I think it's important that you talk about it, and as Marcia helped spearhead the Sustainability Commission, that it's a really important thing to our city. But I'd like you just for a minute to think like a business. Rocky Mountain Power is not a charity organization. Rocky Mountain Power has done research that people want alternatives to clean energy. And so they are looking at answering that need. They would not be considering, maybe we should provide green power to people just because it's the right thing to do. That's not how businesses are run. Businesses are for profit. So they clearly have enough voice across the state of Utah for people who are saying that they want clean energy. And I think the example during the work session was great, that it's not all green neutrons, some brown neutrons are going to be in there so that we have consistent power. But the important thing is that we have to be able to opt in. There are 3 places where a city and individuals can opt out later. In answer to Mr. Heyer's question that, what's it going to cost? We don't know. I mean, and I get your concerns because you don't want to get into a place where you're saying yes to something and be on the hook fiscally for that. I totally respect that and understand that. But we are in a position where when those numbers do come out, and if they don't pencil out for you, if they don't look good, if it isn't for the better of Ogden, then you have an option to back out. But if you don't opt in now, you cannot continue the conversation later. You cannot continue to accrue more data, to have more meetings with Rocky Mountain Power, to give you the information that you need. They're building infrastructure. The reason they're asking everybody to opt in now is they're trying to gauge the size of need that they're going to have. Because as each city opts in, they have a specific population number, and they're going to give it to their bean counter, and that bean counter is going to crunch some numbers and look at existing infrastructure and look at what new infrastructure that Rocky Mountain Power needs to build. And yes, some of that new build will have a pass-through effect to the consumer, but you can opt out once you know what those numbers are. Rocky Mountain Power is pretty good at estimating infrastructure. They've been in that business for a very long time. So they're not going to rush blindly into anything. They're driven by meeting market need, having goodwill within the community, but most importantly, making money. They're not doing this to be charitable. They're doing this because they've recognized the market need. And so I ask you as council members to recognize your local market need. All those kids that showed up for the climate strike, all the people that are in this room periodically over weeks to weeks, all the people that were at the work session from 4 to 6, which most people can't attend. Listen to your community. They want you to opt in. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else? Oh, there we go. My colleague said there was one in the back, but I wasn't sure where in the back. So.
Behind that column.
There you go.
Hello, thank you for your time here. I just wanted to say I don't believe we have a housing shortage. We have a shortage of houses that fit people's needs. Over 50% of the population in this country are single or couples with no children.
Can you? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
But your name.
Okay, I need to. It's a little short for me there. Okay.
Your name. Sorry.
Over 50% of the people.
Sorry, I need you to say your name for the.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm Greg Dewey. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
But only 13% of the houses in the homes in this country fit the needs of the single family or the couple with no children. And I think opening up to, as called, tiny homes, 200 square feet or less, or ADUs, I think is a big solution to the housing problems here. I think that's about it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I didn't mean to harsh your mellow on the message.
Yeah, I got rolling and I had to stop. So
It's kind of scary.
I know. Sorry.
hey, thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you, Cameron, for hanging tight for us for a little bit there. We will get back to our agenda as normally outlined and go back to the request to be on the agenda for the Utah League of Cities and Towns, where we will hear from Executive Director Cameron Dill, where he'll address us on housing affordability issues across the state. And then I think we're going to entertain a motion to move the council and mayor comments after Cameron. And then if that passes, then we'll go to the closed executive session. We're trying to manage everybody's time and respect everybody's time tonight. Hope it's working out.
That's a big book.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That's a thick binder.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members of the Ogden City Council and Mayor Caldwell and the Ogden residents who are here. That was an enlightening discussion that you just had in public comment, and I'm excited actually because I'll be able to speak to a couple of the issues that came up about housing affordability and affordable housing. Before I get started in that presentation, though, I want to acknowledge that Ogden City has made history within the League of Cities and Towns over the last 3 weeks. The League recently elected our new board for this upcoming year. I've been involved with the League of Cities and Towns since 2006. I've been the director for the last couple of years. And for the first time during my time at the League, we will have 2 board members who are elected officials from the same city. So we'll have Marsha White from the City Council will be serving on the board for the next 2 years. And we have as the first vice president of the League this year and president next year, Mayor Mike Caldwell, who's been on the League board for several years. And we've been through thick and thin together, Mayor, and appreciate your leadership over the last few years and incoming as first vice president. And Councilmember White, excited to have you on the League board as well. The League represents all 248 cities and towns, which really puts us in a terrific position to look at big policy issues like housing affordability, affordable housing, and the like. It's actually a fascinating week for me to come to have this discussion with you as elected officials. And here's why. Yesterday, I spent several hours with Congresswoman Maxine Waters. She is the chair of the House Financial Services Committee, and she was here on special invitation from Scott Anderson, the CEO of Zions Bank, and Congressman Ben McAdams. There was a small group that was gathered to talk about the housing crisis nationwide. And Congresswoman Waters has been focusing her committee on what can the federal government do to facilitate addressing the crisis of housing affordability and affordable housing. What was fascinating is she brought up several ideas that have come up before Congress in recent months. Every time she brought forward a specific idea, Senator Jake Anderegg, who's one of the co-chairs on the Commission on Housing Affordability, and I would look at each other, and then we'd look at her and say, well, actually, here's what cities in Utah are already doing on that issue. For example, one of the public comments was about accessory dwelling units and tiny homes. Well, we have cities really across the state over the last couple of years that have implemented ADU ordinances to facilitate tiny homes or mother-in-law apartments or basement apartments and the like. And in fact, at our conference, which several of you attended 3 weeks ago, we actually had a mobile tour of a tiny home that was attended by 63 city officials to get an idea of what that tiny home looked like and how it could potentially be incorporated into their communities. So when Congresswoman Waters asked, has anyone in Utah looked at ADUs? We could say, actually, yes, cities across the state are looking at it. Now, whether it fits in every city, that's up to the actual policymakers. But it was great for us to be able to articulate how Utah cities are really on the forefront of trying to be problem solvers on housing. The second reason that this is a fascinating discussion is that last week today, I was in Pleasant View meeting with your colleagues from Harrisville, Marriott, Slaterville, Far West, West Haven, Plain City, North Ogden, and Pleasant View, if I didn't mention that one already. There are about 40 elected officials and planning commissioners there as we talked about the Wasatch Choice Vision. I know several of you attended the meeting 2 days earlier that was focused on this side of the county, but I intentionally went to that one in part because I knew Mayor Caldwell had it covered on behalf of the league, but I wanted to go to that other one because I wanted to listen. I wanted to hear the concerns from your colleagues in that part of the county about housing, about transportation, and about land use. And it was really insightful because they were asking very similar questions that you're asking tonight. For example, what is SB 34? What do we do as cities to comply with SB 34? And I'll go into more details about that in a moment. What does it mean for our communities? What does it mean for other communities in the county like Ogden? What does it mean for the whole Wasatch Front? It was a 2-hour meeting, and then I was there for another 40 minutes afterward taking questions from elected officials and planning commissioners about it. So my point in bringing that up is that this conversation is not unique to Ogden. It's happening in other parts of the county. It's happening across the region, and frankly, it's happening all over the state. So let me quickly make sure we're all on the same page with some definitions here. In fact, on a side note, the only time I've ever seen Mandy Patinkin in concert was right here in O-Town. He didn't come to Twilight. He was at the Eccles Theater, but it was really phenomenal. I brought my grandmother up to it, and it was one of the highlights of her life. So thank you for organizing that a decade or so ago. Let me just quickly hit on these 5 terms to make sure that we all think it means what we think it means. First, affordable housing, true low-income to moderate income affordable housing. This is housing that is specifically targeted or provided for individuals who make 80% or below area median income, specifically 50% or 30% below area median income. Okay, and I'll come back with some data later in my presentation. And Mr. Chair, I should acknowledge, I want this to be a two-way dialogue, so feel free to cut me off at any point if anybody has any questions. Thanks. So when we talk about affordable housing, the legal definition of affordable housing is the true low-income housing stock for those who most need it in our community. Housing affordability is a different, albeit related issue. Housing affordability is the fact that over the last couple of decades, our wages in Utah have not kept pace with housing costs. And there are a variety of reasons why housing costs have exploded astronomically in Utah. One, there are actually fewer employees in the construction market today than there were before the recession. Think about that in light of the redevelopment of the Salt Lake City International Airport. Think of that in light of the 26,000 new housing units that were built last year in the state. Think of that in light of all of the commercial development all over the state. We have fewer construction workers today than we did before the recession in 2007. So there's a labor shortage, which drives up cost. You have a land shortage in many areas along the Wasatch Front, and when you have a scarcity of land, that drives up the cost, and that has an impact on housing. Ditto with materials. I'll spare you all the details, but tariffs matter, and tariffs have had a considerable impact on the cost of raw materials that go into housing, whether that's labor, steel, aluminum, or other factors. Local land use regulation and local land use policy is also a contributing factor to housing affordability, but it's one of many within that overarching narrative on housing affordability. The third term I want to make sure we're clear about is the term housing gap, and there are actually 2 housing gaps in the state of Utah. Housing gap number 1 deals with true affordable housing, and there are more than 40,000 units that we are short in this state for individuals who are making 30 or 50% area median income and below. Then there's a second housing gap, which is the fact that we've had more new households formed in the last decade than we've had new houses or homes created. That means you have this imbalance, and depending who you ask, that imbalance is roughly 45,000. So sometimes those numbers get conflated and brought together, but 2 different gaps. One for true affordable housing, and the other in just the overall supply of housing. Interesting tidbit about the overall supply of housing. When you look at that shortfall, more than half of that shortfall occurred between 2010 and 2012, which is as the recession was ending, we were starting the slow recovery out of it. We've actually seen the last couple of years, there's not been a gap in production versus new households. So the gap has closed over the last couple of years, but there was a hole that came out of the recession. The fourth is population growth. The state is growing. We are adding a city of Taylorsville every year. And the city of Taylorsville would be the second largest city in Weaver County, 60,000 residents. And we're adding that to the state every year. And then the last term, and this is one that I don't think I can simplify, is the term density, because density means different things to different people in different parts of town, in different parts of the county, to different ages, to different demographics. Ultimately, the word density is often used as a boogeyman. It means change. It means that we're getting away from what our traditional neighborhoods have looked like. Or sometimes it has a connotation that density equals affordability, and that's not always the case. Some of the highest density housing units in the state are downtown Salt Lake City, and there's nothing affordable about downtown Salt Lake City. But often that word takes on a different connotation depending on the audience. And so as we're having this conversation, I'm going to be careful to say what I mean whenever density comes up. So with that being said, let's talk about what cities control when it comes to housing. Cities plan for housing, but we don't build housing. And cities don't control the market forces that I articulated before, but we do control planning. And over the last couple of years, the league, under leadership of our board, has been very proactive at trying to be problem solvers on housing. And so on the left side of the screen, you'll see housing policy in Utah. That was the first document that we released a year and a half ago to try to help cities understand what their role was in housing policy and to be able to more proactively plan for housing. As a result of a year plus worth of advocacy, SB 34 passed. And Mr. Chair, I know you've had fact-finding on housing over the last few weeks. Have you had discussions on SB 34?
Not specifically, not with this detail. So
okay,
thank you. We all know of it. It's part of this conversation, but we need you to describe it. Thank you.
Perfect. Let me remind you where we were a couple of years ago at the legislature. There was actually an effort by several legislators that would have actually withheld city monies if you didn't meet certain quotas for types of housing within your community. That's actually the status quo in California. We as an organization were very concerned about that type of approach. We said there are things that we can control in the housing world because of how we plan for housing, but we shouldn't be punished for things that are outside of our control. So as a result, through the negotiations with the Commission on Housing Affordability, we built on two bills that previously passed, SB 136 in 2017, House Bill 259 in 2018. Let me just briefly reference what those are. SB 136, the reason it got headlines was because it modernized UTA. It reformed UTA. But it was also a 200-page bill. And Mayor Caldwell is chuckling right now because Mayor Caldwell and I spent countless, and emphasize the word countless, hours working on SB 136 2 summers ago. It's a summer we're never going to get back, but it was also a summer that really changed the outlook of transportation in the state. It's a game-changer bill that still hasn't been fully implemented yet. What you need to know about it for purposes of this conversation is that for the first time, the legislature gave UDOT the instruction that they needed to look at local land use when they program state transportation dollars. In other words, the more proactive a city is being in planning for economic development, or planning for a variety of housing, or connecting active transportation, or having a street grid that fits with the state system, the more likely you are to rise in the level of priority for state transportation dollars. SB 136 built that framework, but then we needed to come back and put meat on the bones. House Bill 259 started that in 2018, and then SB 34 ultimately became the way we got from point A to point B. What SB 34 does is it requires 82 cities in the state, those that have a population of more than 5,000, to incorporate 3 or 4 planning tools from a menu of 23 items that fit in your community within your moderate income housing plan, which is a component of your general plan. As a reminder, your general plan has 3 state requirements. 1, land use. 2, transportation and traffic. And 3, moderate income housing. What SB 34 did is it looked at that third component, moderate income housing, and said, cities, you need to take from this menu of 23 items, you need to take 3 or 4 at least and implement them into that component of your general plan, and then report on that implementation year over year. You must do so in order to be eligible for state transportation investment funds, which is a pot of money, about $700 million of state funds. So if, let's say hypothetically, Ogden said, nope, we're not interested in accessing the TIF, we're not interested in implementing the moderate income housing plan as part of our general plan, you could walk away, you just want to be eligible for those state funds. But that was the carrot for communities that aren't as proactive on housing policy to say, look, if you want to qualify for state funds, you need to do your part, recognizing that one size misfits all. And the solutions in Ogden may be different than the solutions in North Ogden or South Ogden, even though you all share a word in your name. The reason Ogden has 4 requirements is because you have fixed transit in the city. So Ogden and Salt Lake City and West Valley City and Layton City and the cities that have fixed transit stations have to pick at least 4, and one of those has to be in your planning around the transit area. For cities that don't have fixed rail, such as, say, like a Marriott Slaterville, they have to pick at least 3. Now, that's the minimum, but there's no maximum. You can pick as many as you want. And in fact, we've started doing some analysis, and I believe one of my colleagues is coming to speak to you in a few weeks. And Ogden is head and shoulders above a lot of other communities in this state of menu items that you're already using. And so now your requirement by December 1st is to make sure that those different tools you're already using are incorporated into your general plan. And then over the next 12 months, report on how those are being implemented. So that then brings me back to Ogden City. Like, what is Ogden, and how does the characteristics of Ogden impact the housing market in Ogden compared to we'll call it your glorified neighborhood? Ogden really is unique. I say that about every city in the state. But if I were to make a checklist of all the unique characteristics of communities around the state, Ogden would check almost every box. So you'll see on the left, I've listed just some. It's not everything by any means, but I've listed some of the reasons why Ogden is a regional hub within Weaver County and really within all of northern Utah. And then I listed some city-specific pieces that are unique to Ogden, and those range from being an employment center for the entire region to having a really unique transportation situation here. You have a front-runner station. You have a historic downtown core that spills over. You have a BRT route that is coming online in the next couple of years, which is super exciting, by the way, and really a tribute to the forward-thinking work of the administration and the council to get that BRT project going. But you're not immediately adjacent to freeways. And so there are benefits and consequences that come with that. You're a very diverse community, and diverse in every sense of the word. You have a variety of neighborhoods, but you also are a historic community. So whereas other communities may have greenfield and neighborhoods that are only a few years old, much of Ogden is built out or is being redeveloped, and you have this charm and character that is unique compared to many other places in the state. So again, you have some really unique characteristics as you think about what your housing market looks like within the city. That's nothing you don't already know, but my point in sharing it with you is that I think it's important for you to know that those who are negotiating legislation on your behalf understand the unique characteristics of your city. So then what is your neighborhood when it comes to housing? Well, I actually define it 2 different ways. There's your neighborhood of your adjacent municipalities, which primarily consist of bedroom communities or communities that are just now starting to taste population growth. You have Hill Air Force Base. And you have communities that have traditionally been agricultural communities that are starting to develop, and in some cases starting to develop very rapidly and bringing with it the sorts of concerns that come with growth, where residents are concerned about the changing nature of the community, questions about how to pay for infrastructure, all those questions. But you also have a second neighborhood, and that second neighborhood is what I'll define as communities of commonality that are other regional hubs around the state or college towns or historic communities, and I've listed just a handful of those. So with that being said, I don't anticipate that you're going to memorize the data sheet that I've put up there, and I always love when people put data like this in PowerPoint, so you're welcome. This is just one sheet from this binder that is information that the state of Utah has collected, and we have a partnership with Rocky Mountain CRC, which has provided the information on the left. They're in the process of trying to build this data out for every city and town in the state. The first focus is on the 82 cities that SB 34 applies to. And after December 1, once cities have to report on whether they've implemented SB 34 into their general plans, we'll be able to gather this type of data more easily. But what this data demonstrates is really twofold. On the left is the data from Rocky Mountain CRC. On the right is the data from Workforce Services. And what you see is that you can break down the type of housing within the city, owner-occupied versus rental-occupied. You can break down the number of units that are deed-restricted. In other words, units that are not just available for low-income residents, but are legally targeted to low-income and moderate-income residents. And then you can see on the right side the breakdown, and recognizing this data is a little bit old because DWS is in the process of updating this. And don't worry, it's all going to be online going forward as opposed to this. But this gives you an idea of the treasure trove of data that exists out there. So you can see the different affordable housing units that are available and the gap. Let me draw your attention. I should have brought my glasses in, so I'm going to have to use this screen so I can see easier. No, I did it to myself. No, that's all right. I can read it here. But what you can see in the top middle there is the renter households by income level, and a third of your renter households, 4,545, over a third of them are extremely low income, so below 30% area median income. When you look below that, and you see that bar graph that goes green, yellow, red. This is information that says not only the number of households, but the number of affordable units, and more importantly, the number of affordable and available units. And this gets back to the gap that I was referencing earlier, that the gap statewide, even in a city like Ogden, which has a tremendous amount of low-income housing stock, there's still a need within the region for more low-income housing stock. Now, notice I said the region, not the city, because you really were trying to look at the big picture and think regionally and act locally. But it really starts to bring this home of like what that definition of the housing gap really is, and then the members of our community who are affected by it. So I told you that I thought you belonged to a couple of different neighborhoods, and I wanted, just for comparison purposes, to use that communities of commonality for comparison. So I just looked at 3 other cities that check some of those same boxes, the regional hubs, college towns, historic areas, and the like. You'll see on the left, those are the 4 cities and the number of housing units in each of those 4 cities. Then the percentage of the units in those cities that are owner-occupied. So Ogden actually has a higher percentage of owner-occupied units than Provo or Salt Lake City does, and then less than Orem. I found that 4th column really fascinating. And again, this will be in that Rocky Mountain CRC data that we're trying to collect for communities all over the state. The total rentals of the county. If you add Orem and Provo, then you get to 60%, which is comparable to what Ogden's providing for all of Weaver County. In Salt Lake City, even though Salt Lake City has the most units available to 30% below, it's only a third of the total rentals of the county, whereas in Ogden, it's 58%. That's really interesting data for you as policymakers, but it's also really interesting data for the collection of policymakers that I spoke to last week, where they were asking, like, what should we be looking at doing to implement SB 34, to implement Wasatch Choice and the Wasatch Front Regional Council's Unified Plan. This is the sort of data that hopefully will allow for cross-border, cross-boundary communications amongst communities in Weaver County. Then that 30% below AMI, I've already referenced that 45-45 number for Ogden, but that last column is really interesting. That the number of deed-restricted units, even though the number of units is high in Orem and Provo, they're not deed-restricted in the same way as they are in Ogden and Salt Lake City. What does that mean from a policymaking perspective? What does that mean from a development perspective? Well, if you are a property owner, say in Orem City, where those units are not deed-restricted, but they're low-income units, and the owner decides, I'm going to rehabilitate this unit, I'm going to rebuild the unit, invest capital into it. Well, there's nothing by law or by contract that would keep those units available for low-income residents. So yes, you may be able to have improved housing stock for a different segment of the housing gap, but you're not replacing those low-income units. Now, the flip side of that is also true, that if you have a deed-restricted unit, you don't want to create a situation where there is no incentive to take a low-income unit that maybe is dilapidated or needs to be renovated. You want to make sure there's still an incentive either through the public sector or the private sector to rehabilitate that unit, make it livable, provide for health, safety, and welfare, but still keep it available to low-income residents. SB 34 started the dialogue about planning. One key component of SB 34 that did not pass was state dollars for the Olene Walker Housing Fund or other sources that could be used as leverage money to clean up or renovate low-income units, but still keep them available to low-income residents, or to spread them through vouchers or other means so that those units are available in other communities. That's going to be a primary focus for the Commission on Housing Affordability in the upcoming legislative session. So with that being said, Mr. Chair, I did bring this document that we've been sharing with cities all over the state and with legislators, and it's really the map to close the gap. Oh, you want to keep one so I can read it? Yes.
So, Cameron, while he's passing those out, if we need to increase our capacity, say 15,500 units.
Statewide?
You increase our capacity of low income by, say, 1,500 units, but we don't have the land capacity to do that. Would that be a problem in that aspect?
For SB 34? Or the nice thing about SB 34 is you can look at the 23 menu items and say, you know what, that just, because we are a redeveloping community, we don't have greenfield for new development, maybe that doesn't really fit within our community. What does make sense is to plan around the front runner station or the BRT stations that'll come up once that is available. Or in Ogden City, you already have a very aggressive program to rehabilitate housing. That's one of the menu items in SB 34. We negotiated that menu item specifically thinking about historic communities that are already on the front line of trying to preserve housing stock, and being able to say, let's give you credit for the good work you're already doing. So I don't know if that answered your question, but that's some of the flexibility we tried to build into that bill.
Okay. Thank you.
So then what's been distributed is the map to close the gap. And yes, it does fold up into a house. And yes, our current league president, when he announced this to the Spanish Fork City Council, folded it as a house and put it on the dais. And he was trying to get everybody to follow his lead. We'll see if that happens. But all kidding aside, what you'll see here is this is our attempt to explain to the legislature, to the private sector, to the nonprofit industry, to stakeholders, the general public, and others, that we all have a role to play when it comes to planning for housing. And that the role that Ogden City can play overlaps with the role of your neighboring communities, but is also going to be different because of the unique characteristics that you have. And so wanted to make sure to leave you with the map to close the gap handout as part of this presentation. Mr. Chair, that's the end of my presentation, but I'm happy to take questions for as long or as short as you would like to ask them.
It's a great presentation where, as we've gone through this journey and we're digging through all this information, clearly it's complicated, right? And it is comforting to know that we do have resources to lean on, both for information, but for policy advice too. So appreciate you coming and sharing that presentation. Are there any questions for Cameron from council members?
No, I just have one comment. We're always, it seems as though we are getting our data from maybe an MSA, and where that MSA is like Clearfield, and it doesn't fit our city. And so where Rocky Mountain CRC is doing that, we're hoping that it's more just Ogden specific or by city specific as opposed to an MSA. So.
Well, that's good feedback for us, because this came up during the legislation debate last year. Is you have the Gardner Policy Institute that is now doing projections for the state. You have census data that's coming from Uncle Sam. Rocky Mountain CRC is the expert in the field about rental housing and deed restricted housing. So that's why we signed the MOU with them to try to gather this information. And so if there's ever a time where Ogden City or the greater communities within Weber County feel like the data is inaccurate, is probably too strong of a word, but maybe incomplete, then that's something we want to know, because ultimately we don't want you to be judged based on incomplete information. So that's helpful.
I don't know if it is or not.
But that's good feedback.
It's not that it's incomplete, sorry.
Okay.
Good. You're good. It's just that it's not based on the income of Ogden City people. It's based on the broader,
on the entire MS.
Correct.
Got it.
And then, if you break that down, it's quite a bit different.
This came up last week, actually, because I had several of your neighboring communities to the west ask me, define area median income. And we went through the ringer at the Capitol about this. Is area median income city specific, county specific, region specific, MSA specific? And honestly, based on the feedback we've gotten this summer on that particular point, I think we need to revisit it in legislation next year to get a little better definition.
At least I think it's really great just to have them right next to each other so you can compare. Because I think we compare like the city to the county sometimes, and that's interesting, and then to the state, but then maybe have all four might be better to have, right? Like city specific, county, MSA, and then state, right?
And the reason it matters, Mr. Chair, is that part of the report that Ogden City will submit to comply with SB 34 is you have to identify the number of units at the 30, 50, and 80. So we need to make sure that that calculation is based on the appropriate data.
Right. And for us, once it gets to this point and we have decisions to make, policy decisions to make, it just creates a disconnect between the people we're serving and trying to make a decision for versus the information that we have. And so we present the information, and even in the slide that you showed, it's one page in that binder full of information, right? It's powerful data.
Right.
And but there's that disconnect is when the people that we serve are looking at it and saying, I don't know who makes that much, but not me. I'm not even close to median.
Yep.
And that's been a challenge for us here locally. So, any other questions for Cameron?
I've got a question. It's kind of baffled me for a while. Where Ogden already carries a pretty high percentage of the lower income housing for our county. I think you had 58% there. I actually thought it was higher, but that was for rentals though. So I guess maybe
that was one singular data point.
Yeah.
But it was the number of rentals within the county. 58% of the rentals within the county are within Ogden City's jurisdiction.
So if we were to probably break that out to categories of rentals, I think Ogden probably carries a lot heavier load on lower income rentals. We continue to get developers that come in and want to put apartments that hold a lot of people, and some of them are upper scale or whatever. And that's where I struggle probably to figure out. We want to increase our tax base because we need it really bad. And so how do we transition to that? And, we don't want to gentrify anybody here, but we also see our neighboring communities, our partners in the county that are looking to help that carry that load a little bit. How do we help that?
First, let me say that I'm not a policymaker. So I'm happy to answer your question with that caveat that I'm not the one who actually has to make the tough decision like you and your fellow elected officials. One of the best parts about SB 34's passage is the fact that I could walk into a meeting with your counterparts in the other part of the county, and it was a discussion item. People knew what it was, and they wanted to know what it meant for their communities. And that's happening across the Wasatch Front. One key component of SB 34 is tying the housing component of your general plan with the transportation component of your general plan. I didn't mention that earlier, but that's a key component of that bill. As we talked about it last week with your colleagues in the county, the number one concern that came out from them was how do we pay for the infrastructure? How do we have sufficient infrastructure for all the housing growth we're seeing? And I was also pleased that when we asked people for their biggest concerns, that several of them brought up the cost of housing and making sure that people weren't going to be priced out of the area. So I think a combination of SB 34, the outreach from Wasatch Front Regional Council, legislators at the state having this conversation, the business community and others, have created the space for the dialogue. Now, where the dialogue meets policymaking is your space. And I don't profess to speak for you when you have a specific project in front of you because there's so many other competing factors therein. Our hope from an organizational perspective is that when you are looking at that project and when your counterparts in other parts of the county are looking at specific projects, that they're thinking regionally and thinking about the impacts on the whole region as they're evaluating that project.
Thank you.
Will there be any changes to SB 34 coming up?
Will there be any changes? Let's put it this way. The legislature will be considering the next phase, which is the funding for the Olene Walker Housing Fund. There may be changes on the area median income piece that your colleagues have raised. Will there be any changes to the carrot about the eligibility for the State Transportation Investment Fund? I don't think so. There were some who wanted to go further, wanted to tie it to gas tax revenues or other things, and we said absolutely not. I think there will be continued discussion about the number of menu items. Are the numbers 3 or 4 sufficient, or should that number go up? We felt like it was important to start somewhere that was a meaningful number for communities that hadn't done anything. But for a community like Ogden, I know for a fact you're already doing more than 4. So then that gives you space to then talk to your colleagues in the county, in other parts of the county, and say, here's what's working for us. Now, what's important about SB 34 is when you report a year from now about essentially do the progress report of the implementation, you may find that one of the menu items you picked hasn't really had an impact on the market. And that's not your fault because there are market forces at play, but maybe it gives you that space to reconsider and maybe go a different direction. I do think the legislature is going to continue to look at housing policy because the issues around population growth are not going away. And it's important for all cities to be at the table and doing our part to plan for the future.
Can I ask one more simple question? How much of it is basically just supply and demand?
Part of the reason I started my presentation with the definitions of the housing gap is because I think supply and demand explain a part of the housing affordability housing gap. Because ultimately during the recession, we saw less housing being built, yet the population continued to grow. Those are economic conditions that drove that, the market forces that drove that, and now we have a housing gap in part driven by those economic and market conditions. So some of that can be solved simply by increasing the supply, and then ideally the prices come down. For the housing gap for true low-income affordable units, generally speaking, an investor, a developer, a property owner can't make money off of building a true low-income housing unit without some sort of market intervention. So that's not as simple as just supply and demand. One of the frustrations that we've had as an organization over the last year and a half has been that some of these nuances get forgotten, and instead we have the 30-second conversation. So I really appreciate the fact that this has not been a 30-second conversation, but has been hopefully an in-depth dialogue that will help you as policymakers.
There's been a lot of talk about ADUs. Mm-hmm. That seems to be something that could be implemented much quicker. Mm-hmm. We have an issue with ADUs. I mean, we have them largely across the whole city, but very few people, we don't know who they are.
Right.
We have a fee that we charge people, and maybe that's the thing that's keeping people from it.
I don't think so.
Well, maybe not, but I think that's something that it would be helpful for us to know how many we had. Mm-hmm. What are you doing Monday night?
This coming Monday night?
Yeah.
No, it's my anniversary, so I'm planning to take a long weekend if that's okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to get you to another meeting.
Good answer.
In his anniversary, you're the last person who's thinking about spending.
I know. I don't blame him a bit. I know.
He's not looking to get his planning on.
The anniversary in a year too. Let's ask that question.
Yeah, right.
I think you said, yes, I'd like to attend, but I have another engagement.
Thank you, Councilmember, yes.
Any other questions for Cameron? Cameron, thanks for coming all this way. Mm-hmm. Not only thanks for coming all this way, but you guys wrestled with this issue. We all saw it that work at the Capitol. You guys hammered this out with so many stakeholders and so many cities, so many different angles at this, and that was only for SB 34.
Right.
And you guys do that for so many pieces of legislation that affect communities across the city. And we just can't thank you guys enough, and thank the administration for the role you guys play and the role that Marcia's now going to play as part of that machine is enormous. So,
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the city staff, Mark Johnson, Gary Williams, Mark Stratford. I mean, the list goes on and on of your city staff that contributes their time and expertise to help with our legislative advocacy efforts on behalf of all cities. Last year, we worked on 362 bills that impacted cities in some form. I learned yesterday that there are already over 800 bill files open for the 2020 legislative session.
Heard that today.
And it's still only a 45-day session.
I got tired thinking about it when I heard it today. So,
yeah, tell me about it.
Could you drop a business card off with me before you leave?
He's going to pursue that date no matter what.
Yeah.
Maybe not that one, but maybe another one. So,
can I approach the
yes,
stand?
sir. You can. Thank you.
Thanks, Cameron. Appreciate it.
Are you going to provide refreshments during that?
Anything's possible.
Okay.
Whatever it takes. All right.
It's getting awkward over there, gentlemen.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you, Cameron. Okay, we still have a closed executive session on our agenda tonight. I don't know how long that's going to take. So before we move into that, I'd like to entertain a motion to move council and mayor comments between items 3 or ahead of the closed executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Lopez, followed by Councilmember White to move agenda item number 6, council and mayor comments ahead of the closed executive session. This is a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. We are to comments from the mayor tonight.
Couple of quick things before Cameron sneaks out. I want to add my voice to the thank yous for the work that he and his staff do. It was interesting, 4 years ago, this wasn't really a part of the conversation through either Wasatch Front Regional Council or through the League of Cities and Towns, and these guys have done a great job wrestling. The needs of 248 cities that he represents are very broad and very wide, and they're all in different states of development or redevelopment, and they've struck, I think, a really fair middle ground, and they've earned a spot at the table. So they've done a great job. Cameron, appreciate everything you do and all the balls that you juggle down there. I've been amazed at how you guys are able to stay on top of all of that stuff. So thank you very much, and we appreciate being able to work with you on that. And Wasatch Front Regional Council, they provide a similar role for cities and communities like ours along the Wasatch Front, and be remiss if I didn't publicly thank both Andrew Gruber and Cameron Deal for the work that they put into that. For those that are still here and spoke earlier, we appreciate you being here, and we want you to know that you have been heard, and we're having conversations about that. It's our job as some of this comes together to communicate back to you exactly what's happening and where we're at with that. So we've appreciated the energy and you guys showing up and continuing to be a voice for what you want to see happen. That's something we all collectively listen to and we appreciate. I know it's hard to come and spend all of these hours on Tuesday nights. The last month we've averaged a 10 p.m. leave, and that's a long night for everybody, and especially those that volunteer to come and participate in the meeting. So we appreciate everybody being here.
Thank you, Mayor. Any comments from council members?
No, who, you said that a business owner donated the books? Who? Thank you. Will you tell her thank you?
Yeah.
We'll reach out to her to say thank you, but if we don't get to her, thank you.
I want to thank all those who are coming this evening, both the family and also Marcia White. Marcia White is always on our minds, and we're always looking at Marcia White. It's an important structure in that part of the city, and they have programs that we hope we can learn and look at the facility. And we were stayed by 10.
You were a little shy last time.
Well, yeah. Thanks to that productive first half.
I do have a couple comments.
Please, Angela.
Okay. I just want to say thank you very much for the book as well, and for the list. I'll definitely look that over. And then also, I just wanted to make sure people note, I think a lot of people have left already, but we will have the summary of the housing discussion. I think it's a work session, right, on October 29th that the council,
If we
maybe
meet that night.
it's our fifth
Yeah, so we were going back and forth whether or not you wanted to meet that night, so that's still up for
Yeah, because we need to kind of figure out what direction we want to go on that, right? And then also next week on Tuesday, we have a open house about the strategic plan, and the diversity commissioners will be there, so it'll be at the Golden Hours at 6 o'clock. So community members are welcome to come and just talk with us about that. And
There will be food provided, right?
I believe so.
Yep.
She's shaking her head yes.
Yep.
So please come then also.
Thank you, Vice Chair Chaburka. Any other comments from other council members?
Just want to congratulate the mayor and Councilmember White for that apparent historical achievement on this. I mean, that seems to be pretty remarkable. I wanted to clap when he said that, but I didn't want to get in trouble. No, I'm just kidding. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, I guess I'd like to just close this portion of our meeting by adding to the comments that the mayor made. We really do appreciate the effort you're putting in to come here and speak with us. Sometimes you're coming here and you're asking us to lead, and sometimes we don't always know how to lead. That's kind of how leadership is. And but I do know that leadership should always start with listening, and it should start with learning. And I hope it involves loving. So we don't want to be quiet to you. We want you to know that we're listening, and we are doing our best, but we're not doing it perfectly. But that's just how it is for us. I hope that you'll accept our genuine desire to hear from you. And the same goes for the police department. Is the chief still here?
Yes.
Chief's over there.
Okay. Hopefully you can hear, but I have had a lot of people in the community give us books to read, actually. Not give me a book, but just say, you ought to read this. I'll get my phone will buzz, and there'll be a link to an article. You ought to read this. And I'll just tell you, I'm reading a lot right now. I'm going to read this, and I'd read any book that the police department wants me to read or feels I need to read. And I think that same would go for this council and administration. We've got a journey ahead of listening, learning, loving, and understanding that is so fundamental to what's happening here. And that is going to be our first step in leadership somehow. We're working through how we can separate the litigation side from the community request for conversation, and we want you to know that we are doing that. It's just, it's been difficult, but we also have a diversity commission that's here for these exact reasons, and they want to help. They're hearing from the community as well. They're hearing from the police, right? And it's not one side versus another. This is all Ogden. So we've got a lot of work to do, starting within ourselves, and we want everybody to know that. So appreciate you hanging in here tonight through our long meeting, because we've got a lot of regular business to tend to, but we clearly have a lot of business to tend to with one another as a whole. Thank you. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn into the closed executive session.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Lopez, second by Councilmember Heyer, to adjourn into the closed executive session for one of the reasons listed on the agenda. This is a roll call vote.
Okay. Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember Blair.
Aye.
Vice Chair Chaburka.
Aye.
Chair Nadolski.
Aye. That passes. And just so the public, so we're clear, we will be adjourning from this meeting in the closed executive session. So we're done in here for tonight. Thank you so much.